on November 30th, we'll be hearing several instrumental works of mine that I've been working on over the past few years, and it all started with Petrarca. I've discovered for myself, obviously he's been around for quite some time, his work, and he became the source of everything for me. For a long time I couldn't really write a piece without him. He was sort of my muse. And after several years of doing this, and his poetry, what it unlocked for me was this very dramatic impulse that I think was always there, but somehow his words gave me permission to really go in that direction. And when I came to notice that there were a bunch of pieces that were dealing with Petrarca, I had the chance to go to the Bellagio Center and work on one of the pieces, which was fantastic. Got even more of the sense of Italy and the Italian language in my ear, and came back with a bunch of music and showed it to Dan Lapel at New Focused Recordings, and he thought it would be great as a CD project. So then we began recording each one, and that's what we have now. So I'm so happy that Paolo Valesio will be reading the poems before we hear the pieces and maybe mixed in with the pieces, because there you get a sense of the origin, and these poems really are where it all began for me. That was the point of discovery. So through the lens of this Italian poet, now also through the lens of a living Italian poet, we can sort of get in touch with that special origin. So I think of my process of composing as one of an unmasking process. It's a pathway of taking away in order to build, which is kind of funny because obviously I have to put notes on a page for someone to create from. Nothing comes to life without giving them information. But the process of composing feels like a process of taking away until a more essential place is revealed. And I think what I have to go through as an artist is to kind of cut the noise down to a level where something more essential is exposed to me. And from that place I can work on more interesting things. And this process, it sort of, I think, ultimately what it ended up attracting me to Michelangelo as well in terms of his poetry, because what was a beautiful connection to me at the end was to see that he also believes that the best art is an art that subtracts. And so this idea that a person looks at an object and sees what can be removed from it in order to reveal the artistic object to us is absolutely fascinating to me. And I love working in this world, and it's very close to my process. So the title of the CD and of the concert is Corpo di Terra, which means flesh of earth. I prefer to think of it as earth flesh, and I like to think of it that way because I like to imagine, as I mentioned before, our hero Petrarca wandering through a darkened night, a landscape, and feeling that the mountains and the ground in front of him and the stars above him are all very much alive, and his accompaniment. So I like feeling, and also the way he addresses myth, all of a sudden we have Taurus moving through the sky and, scattering seeds on the earth. And I like to think that in his world, all of these things were very much present and working, so that it's not a ground, but rather a living flesh and a moving, animated, active scenery kind of for him, for his texts. And each of the pieces has a title that comes from a sonnet by Petrarch. For example, Polvere et Ombra, which means dust and shadow, and it comes from a fragment. It's a setting of this 22nd again, but it's that particular part comes from this fragment that says, "But really we are just but shadow and dust." And I always have been attracted to this idea that at the end of the day, that's all, we are all the same material, and we just go back to being that material. It never changes, whatever form we take. And I feel like that's where he was going when he said those words. When I started to think about this project as a Petrarca project and as a CD, and sort of started to conceive of it that way, I immediately thought of the Italian Academy as the home for something like this, for so many reasons, for the connection to the language, for the setting, the way the space is laid out. It feels like it could be a setting for a Baroque opera, and that is exactly the sort of fantasy world that I inhabit. So that came to mind right away, and gratefully a bit of time later it all worked out. And so it really, of all the places I could ever think of, I would want it to be here.